Hello, everyone. Trying to understand what goes through women's minds sometimes seems like an exercise in futility. I recently had a conversation with a female acquaintance that I talk to every once in a while. And as I was talking to her, I mentioned that I had started this channel. Her immediate reaction was to push back on me and say, "Oh, you shouldn't have a channel like this. You shouldn't be talking about women. You shouldn't be talking about relationships. You shouldn't be talking about dating. You shouldn't be talking about any of that." Now, naturally, I was a bit taken back by how she reacted. I gave it a few moments and followed up with the typical question: why shouldn't I be talking about this, or what's going on here? Her response was, "Well, you don't really have any knowledge or experience to talk about it. You haven't dated that many women. You haven't had really any long term relationships, and you're not actively chasing women at this point in time. So you just need to shut up about it. You don't understand anything." So, definitely caught me a bit off guard with what she said. I waited for a few minutes, kind of let this mull in my mind, and this is what I came back to her with. I said, "Doctors often talk at length about things that they don't have any personal experience with. Therapists, they will talk to people about all sorts of terrible, horrid things that their clients have gone through, but it doesn't necessarily reduce their effectiveness just because they personally haven't experienced something that their client has." So I threw that back at her and said, "Well, if that's the case, then wouldn't doctors and lawyers and therapists, and there's other professions too, if I thought about it, wouldn't they have no right to talk about certain things because they hadn't personally experienced it?" And she came back at me and said, "Well, they go to school, or they study, or they do all of this stuff, get their degrees and certifications for that sort of thing. So that gives them the right to talk about it. You don't have that." Okay. Again, kind of thought about it for a little bit, and I responded. I said, "Well, do you think that when I talk about certain topics that I don't do any research, that I don't look into things, try to find information to help formulate the opinions or support the opinions that I have? Do you think I just go blindly in and just say random stuff without anything to back it up?" Because I do. I certainly do take time when I discuss a topic to try to research it at least a little bit. And she came back and said, "Well, all you do is look at incel content. That's all you look at. That isn't reliable stuff to talk about." Pretty harsh way to just keep throwing it right back on me. But continuing this, because I was actually very intrigued by her reaction, I said, "Okay, why don't you tell me about places or locations on the internet, or websites, or publications that I can go to that would help give me information?" So I wanted to know, well, if everything I look at, if the YouTube videos I look at, or Reddit, or the websites are all incel content, what content out there is there that I can go to that will help to formulate the opinion, that help me kind of get my opinions and my thoughts together? Well, this went back and forth for a little bit longer. I won't go in all to the details, but long and short of it was, she couldn't come back with a good answer because there really was no answer. So that conversation kind of obviously went completely off the rails, and we'll leave it at that. But it did make me think a lot about what she said. And there were really two main thoughts that I had coming out of it that I hadn't really considered before. The first one was this attitude or this belief that if I somehow hadn't had this direct experience, that I wasn't allowed to have a conversation about a topic. So, because I don't have tons and tons of dating experience, supposedly, or I haven't been in tons of serious relationships, so that I'm somehow not entitled to an opinion. I'm not entitled to talk about topics. So, how many dates am I supposed to, or how many women am I supposed to have dated before I'm allowed to have an opinion on dating? Is it 10? Is it 20? 50? 100? And who determines what that number is? Same thing. What about serious relationships? Is it supposed to be 3 months, 6 months, a year, 5 years? What about, do I have to be married before I can have a conversation or have an opinion about marriage? What about the same thing with kids? It really is ridiculous. And especially when you see these women on the internet, TikTok particularly, that talk about dating hundreds of guys, potentially sleeping with hundreds of guys. Yeah, I don't need to have a significant dating history. I don't need to have a crazy body count to have reasonable opinions about dating, or to know that dating, especially for men, is complete and total garbage, or that there's a lot of women out there that really have no business being in dating, right? So that's the first thing here, which really surprised me that anybody could have that sort of opinion. The second point was this belief that somehow all the content that I look at is incel content. So I'm supposed to disregard men's experiences. So when men talk about their own dating experiences where they've had terrible ones, I'm just supposed to ignore that it has no value, that anybody who wants to formulate opinions about how dating is, or how women are, or how just relationships go, shouldn't be able to hear what other men have to say. And furthermore, if we don't use that information, what information is out there? You could say, oh, well, let's look at scientific research and these studies or whatever else that they do. How many of those are truly unbiased? Let's be realistic. There is a huge slant in academia towards women. And even when you see these studies that are talk about, what is it, there's something about men unaliving themselves. I think it's 4 to 5 times the normal rate. I can't remember exactly what that number is. I don't have it right at hand. But even when you see studies that talk about that, it's almost always slanted from the perspective of, well, how does that affect women? If men are not dating women anymore, okay, but how does that affect women? No concern about, well, how does that affect guys? Same thing. Men are checking out of the workforce. They're no longer in there. Well, how does that affect women? I mean, that's the same topic over and over. Is how does it affect women? How does it affect women? Does anyone care about how it affects men? And furthermore, how much of that research should I really consider when I'm forming my opinion, when there's such a slant towards promoting women even at the expense of men? It seems like a ridiculous thing to do. So, where is the information out there? Where is that knowledge? Where is the quote unbiased stuff that I'm supposed to look at, where I can objectively determine if men's opinions are really valid or not? The truth is, it's not out there. It simply is not out there. So, really, I think that the key takeaway for this is, one, men, you don't have to have this overwhelming experience with dating and with women and with relationships to have an opinion, to see that it's not the best thing. And that even if you do choose to date, even if you choose to try to pursue a relationship, that you should do it with an extreme level of caution and be very careful about what you're getting into. The other thing as well is that don't let anyone, but especially women, shame you for having an opinion, and much less talking about your opinion. The fact that someone, sure, you can attack my opinion, you can think my opinion is dumb or stupid or whatever else, but to simply tell me that I'm not allowed to have an opinion or to talk about my opinion just because, again, just because I haven't dated hundreds of women, that's a load of crap. Don't let that don't let that be the case. Don't let others tell you what you can and can't do. And as far as men out there, have your opinions. Look at the information, talk to other men, look at how other men feel about dating, and use that to make your determination. And if someone tells you otherwise, they can bugger off. And especially if it's a woman, maybe you should think about whether that's a woman that you want to have in your life. Well, that is all for today. I will see you all in a future video. Have a good day and take care.